Part 6, boxing your corners. This is the second to last step besides zigzagging. You're almost done. So you should be proud of yourselves how far you've come. I know this was more difficult than the pillow. You're going to have to box your corners. What that means is you're going to do each corner at a time. You're going to spread the openings up. I'm going to zoom out just a little for you. There we go. Okay, so they were folded flat. You're going to pull them apart. You might have to do some moving of the fabric. You're going to match your two raw edges up, okay? Raw edge, raw edge. You're going to get this as flat as you can and as even as you can. And you're going to pin this down. Okay. This is a difficult step. Or at least I believe it's a difficult step for beginner sewers. Is boxing your corners. The hardest part was cutting the squares. Okay, with this you want to make sure that this is down. Okay, it's flapped over. And again, it's a lot of fabric, so you might bend a pin or two. Like so. Now, do you see inside mine how my pink fabric has tucked itself down? Okay, that's important to catch before you start sewing. Okay, because if it tucks itself down like that, it actually tucked itself down quite far. Okay, I only cut it on it. You won't actually be stitching your fabric, the outside fabric, and then that's gonna cause you to mess up. So make sure that you're catching all your fabric before. If you don't want to pin this thick part, that's fine. I'm not going to, just because I'm going to ruin all my pins by doing that. Just make sure that you stitch with it pointing down. Okay, and then the last one at the very edge. Make sure that your stitch length or your stitch selector is at 1. You don't want it to be on a zigzag for this quite yet. You're going to use, with this one, a 1/4 seam allowance. So I'm going to pull my machine closer. Okay, remember 2/8 is 1/4. This is tricky. When you lay it down, make sure it's not tucking in any fabric. I'm going to find my 2/8 seam allowance here. Okay. With this, remember to back stitch. You are going to go forward a little bit, and then you're going to go back. Make sure you don't go too far back so that you're actually stitching your fabric, keeping on the 2/8. Make sure that this flap stays down. When you get to the end, make sure you backstitch, pull it off. Now, you're going to want to zigzag again across the top here. It keeps all your threads from fraying. Okay, see how I have all these extra gray threads just pulling off? Okay, your zigzag's going to prevent that. I'm going to trim that off before I start zigzagging. Okay, if you want to stitch all 4 of your corners first before you zigzag instead of going back and forth, you are more than welcome to. I just find it easier to do each corner by itself. So if you do it each like that, if you do each step like this, you stitch your 1/4 and then you stitch your zigzag, you're going to be done after you get all 4 corners. If you choose to do all your corners first and then zigzag, then obviously you have a little bit of extra step. And it's important to use the same zigzag stitch that you did running along the other edges. Okay, this is a tight zigzag. And something doesn't sound right on my machine. Okay. Something's clinking. I believe it's probably my bobbin. At this point, you may or may not have had to wind a new bobbin at this point. I'm gonna actually check to see. Right before I started, I did have to wind a new bobbin, and I'm gonna reinsert my bobbin because do you notice a clinking sound? That should never be a noise that you hear when you're sewing. Okay. Always make sure that it goes in. If it is making that clinking sound, my suggestion is you stop and put your bobbin in and re-thread your machine. Not sure why it's making that clinking sound, but we'll find out. Okay. See, you can tell wasn't right with my machine because it was clanking so much. Now, at this point, I can trim all my threads so that they're not sticking out. And 1 out of 4 sides is done. Now I'm going to show you the other. I'm going to repeat this so that you can see it, but I'm not going to do it for all 4 sides just because it is redundant. Okay. So you have this. You're going to open it up. Make sure you have your gray and outside fabric on each side. Okay, it's kind of like a fish's mouth. Okay. You want to even this up as much as possible. It does get trickier because I've already done the other side. Okay, so notice how, let's see if I can zoom out here. This is an important thing to know too. See how this is folded this way? That means this has to be folded this way again. Okay, try not to do opposite or you get this funky twist. Again, it is inside the bag, so it doesn't 100%, you won't see it. This is more of just an easier way to stitch it. And again, make sure all 4 pieces of fabric match up when you do this, and make sure that they don't slip because they are gonna, the outside fabric that you've picked, the cotton is pretty slippery. It doesn't grab very well, or it doesn't stay in place very well. So it's important to make sure that you have all 4 pieces of fabric together in one spot. Again, if you did not cut your squares right, they're not gonna, your box isn't gonna be 100% square. So you have to keep that in mind. Again, you're gonna find your 2/8 line. Go forward. If you switch to zigzag, make sure you go back to 1. Ooh, just missed it. See, my machine's not making that noise anymore, which means it was my bobbin. Something happened with my bobbin. Don't ever get freaked out. This, I just didn't make sure my threads were pushed back behind my presser foot when I started. Some of you might have done this already. It's not going to impact any of your stitching, so you're good to keep going on your 2/8. Okay, and this is kind of on a curve, so you do have to make sure that you are getting as close to the corner as possible. Okay, you're gonna pull it out. I'm gonna have extra because I had it. All right, then you're gonna go through and you're gonna trim your threads, and then you're gonna zigzag. You're gonna repeat that for both sides. I know this is a lengthy video. It's probably the longest one that you've had to watch so far, but this one had the most explanation that you needed. Okay, so zigzag, and then you're gonna do it for the same side. Then you're gonna turn your bag inside out, and your bag's done.